Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why, and how of newspaper reading. Today we are going to analyze the Hindu dated 16th of April 2020. Displayed on the screen is a list of articles that we are going to discuss today. Timestamping for the same has been provided in the description of the video. In our series to introduce to you the eLearn platform developed by Rao's Study Circle, today let's focus on a very important aspect of testing, that is report. Now let's go to the prelims test, go to test series, and let's understand the DNS quizzes. Now here on a mock basis we have done a test and we can see that there are details available. Once you have taken the test, it will show you the report link as well. We will see the latest report and how it is going to help us in our examination endeavor. The first thing that you will notice that the moment you open the report, it tells you the kind of rank that you have scored out of the total number of people who have taken the test. It also tells you about the number of questions attempted, how much of a time you have spent, and what is your accuracy rate. At the same time, it also tells your percentile as well in this particular test. Next important metrics is the time taken in terms of this particular test. We have taken 8 minutes and 16 seconds. We have got 4 minutes of 17 seconds for correct answers, 3 minutes 53 seconds for incorrect answer, and 1.6 seconds for skipped answer. Since we did this test just to showcase how this entire report works, the time shown is very less. At the same time, it also talks about accuracy. Now, the most important aspect of any kind of reporting is the comparison. Now here you can see that there is score comparison available in which your score and topper scores. Accuracy comparison is also available where your accuracy and topper's accuracy and average accuracy is highlighted. Third important aspect is time comparison. How much of a time you have spent, how much of a time topper has spent, and what is the average time that people have taken. Apart from that, this also focuses on a graph in which you can see the number of students and where you basically stand. We understand that those who want to get successful in the examination should score above 97-98 percentile. And where should they lie in order to get a score here? So we can see that all those people who are going to reach in this particular region are those who are going to get success in the examination. And this is what the journey is in terms of the movement. Similarly, rank versus marks is also depicted here. Now here it is important to understand that we are trying to compete against the best, and that is why the top performers of any test are very important, and hence we can see how top performers have performed in terms of their score. So someone like Divyanshu Kapoor has scored 147 marks, Hrithik has scored 137 marks, and hence on and henceforth, and we can see their rank as well. It should be your goal that very soon your name should also figure in the top performers. Page number 8 of today's newspaper has highlighted a very important piece of information which talks about outdated census data keeps 10 crore people out of the public distribution system. Now, economists Jean Drèze and Ritika Khera have highlighted that over 10 crore people have been excluded from the public distribution system because the kind of data that we have used from the 2011 census is obsolete in nature. At the same time, it is important here to highlight that same data is being used to calculate state-wise National Food Security Act coverage. Now this issue became important because during the lockdown, when people have lost their livelihood, PDS support has become critical for their survival. At the same time, in order to provide any kind of support to the people of this vulnerable group, the census data is being used. In this context, let's first understand the importance of coverage under the National Food Security Act. Now, when we talk about the National Food Security Act, the PDS is supposed to cover 75% of population of rural area and 50% of the population in the urban area. Now, if we extrapolate these figures, then it will come out that 67% of the total population is being supported by National Food Security Act. Now, here it is important to understand that in 2011, India's population was around 121 crores. So by this figure, if we calculate 67% of Indian population, it will turn out to around 80 crore people. However, in the current scheme of things, if we see the population of India, which is more of a projection, for 2020, the population would stand at around 137 crore. Now, let's pay attention to this particular fact that if National Food Security Act covers 67% of the population, then it should cover around 92 crores. And that is what the authors have highlighted, that around 12 crore people will not get any kind of support because of outdated census data being used for National Food Security Act. The authors also highlighted that the biggest gap is found in the poorer states of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, and hence this problem is much bigger and needs to be addressed as soon as possible. Now, the point that authors want to highlight is that these numbers in terms of population have now been frozen for the sake of administrative convenience. However, what is expected from the government is to update these numbers, thereby allowing the state governments to issue new ration cards over the time. Author clearly points out that instead of this particular approach, the center's calculation of the actual number of people to be covered in each state has remained frozen, and this has resulted in the exclusion error in the PDS. In order to understand this particular situation, let's take an example. There are about 7 lakh pending applications for ration cards in Jharkhand because the state government stopped issuing the new ration card several years ago to avoid exceeding the numbers provided for by the central government. Now the problem is this exclusion will continue in near future as well, with the 2021 census process being delayed by the COVID-19 pandemic. Any proposed revision of PDS coverage using the data could now take several years. Now, in this case, it is important for us to know that Supreme Court of India has observed in the case of right of food that right of food forms an integral part of right of life, guaranteed under Article 21. Right to food is inherent to a life with dignity, and in this reference, Article 21 should be read in accordance with Article 39A and Article 47. In this particular reference, Article 39A requires the state to direct its policies towards securing that all its citizens have a right to an adequate means of livelihood. At the same time, when we talk about Article 47, it is a duty of the state to raise the level of nutrition and standard of living and to improve public health. It seems that government has frozen the data, and this will take away livelihood and food security from millions of Indians. And in this context, this article is very important from the perspective of understanding. Also important here is to understand that this particular initiative of the government to freeze the data goes against the Supreme Court direction in case of right for food, and at the same time against the directive principles enshrined in Article 39A and Article 47. Today's newspaper is full of news items which basically highlight US President Mr. Donald Trump's stand on WHO. Here in this context, on page number 6, there is an editorial which talks about disastrous decision. Similarly, on the page number 14, there is an article which focuses on Trump under fire for attacking WHO. Page number 8 of today's newspaper highlights an article which talks about India's stand in terms of Trump's decision to withhold WHO funding. Now, as far as this topic is concerned, this topic is important from the perspective of international organization, and it is important from the perspective of prelims as well as mains. Now, let us try to understand the entire context of the news. US President Mr. Donald Trump has announced that the US will suspend WHO funding. In the initial stage, US has decided that this funding will be stopped for 60 to 90 days, and in this particular period, their administration will decide how well the WHO has worked and what US should do in terms of funding the WHO programs. Now, in this particular time when the whole of the world is fighting against COVID-19, such a global initiative like WHO could fall for Chinese influence under these conditions when funding is squeezed. It is important for us to know that in the last 1 week, Mr. Trump has repeatedly rebuked the WHO, arguing that they missed the call on the novel coronavirus pandemic. US has also alleged that WHO was slow to respond to declare this as global pandemic. At the same time, its approach was much more China-centric rather than world or health-centric. Now, it is important for us to understand that international organizations like WHO are not a sideshow to power politics. Organizations like WHO are very crucial in terms of leading the global politics. Now, it is very important for us to understand that in the recent past, the approach of US has been to withdraw from many international platforms. As United States has decided to withdraw its support to international organization, many countries like China and other powers have happily stepped into the void. Now, in this context, it is important for us to understand that now the United States may isolate itself from its preeminent institution of global health governance, and there would be implications for the same. So, when we talk about the importance of WHO, we know that there are two aspects that we need to focus upon. First, it is crucial to the world leadership. Now, when we talk about WHO organization, which got established in 1948, it has worked in multiple fields in terms of removing many kinds of disease like cholera, polio, and HIV/AIDS, etc. The work of the organization is exemplary in nature, and hence, one or two incidences where the response might be slow cannot be the reason to judge the performance of the entire organization for the entire duration of over 70 years. Second important aspect that we need to understand is that whenever we talk about health, global health coordination is one form of international public good. When we call something as an international public good, it means that this is something which benefits all the countries. At the same time, it is important to understand that none of the countries can be excluded from the benefits of international public good. So, even if we focus on these two basic dimensions, first, crucial to world leadership, and second, health as an international public good, the stand of Mr. Trump looks like a very rash decision. At the same time, the experts have commented that the United States did not understand the magnitude of the problem that COVID-19 created. And the current step by the United States seems to be a measure in which Mr. Trump is trying to actually escape from the responsibility of COVID-19 pandemic that has caused thousands of deaths in the United States. Now, with this, what comes to our mind is that does the WHO have freedom to do what it needs to do about COVID 19? Now, in this context, it is important for us to know that how international organizations have operated before 1991 and after 1991. Now, the important benchmark of 1991 has been created because the collapse of Soviet Union took place in 1991. And before that, the world was bipolar in nature. There was US and its allies, and there was the USSR. Both the groups tried to balance each other in terms of partnership in various international platforms, which included UN as well as WHO. However, when we talk about post 1991, it is entirely dominated by US and its allies. Now, post 1991, the United States, along with its allies, was the only truly global source of not just public goods but also club and private ones, such as credible security guarantees. This particular influence of these countries comes from the fact that they control 70% of world's GDP. And hence, the United States and its allies could exercise enormous market and regulatory power to influence international and domestic policies of other countries. And in this sense, many international organizations became platform for the negotiation of these developed countries. Apart from these international goods, Apart from these international goods like public health, these platforms are also a way through which they make and enforce norms, rules, and arrangements that guide the international order. So, the importance of these institutions is very high. Now, in this context, let's try to understand more about World Health Organization and World Health Assembly, which might be very important from the perspective of prelims examination. Now let us focus on two agencies which are very important from the perspective of the coming examination, and will be focusing on World Health Organization as well as the World Health Assembly. The focus would be to understand what are the similarities and what are the unique attributes of both the organizations. Now when we talk about WHO or the World Health Organization, it is a specialized agency of United Nations which is primarily responsible for international public health. The WHO Constitution, which establishes the agency's governing structure and principle, states its main objective as ensuring the attainment by all people of the highest possible level of health. It is important to remember that when we talk about WHO Health Organization, its headquarters is in Geneva, which is located in Switzerland. Another important significant feature of WHO is that it has 6 semi-autonomous regional offices and 150 field offices worldwide. So in this way, we can see that World Health Organization has footprints all over the world. Now, as far as the organization is concerned, this organization was established on World Health Day, which is celebrated on 7th of April 1948. At the same time, it is also important to highlight that the true nature of work of WHO started in 1951 only, which was triggered by significant infusion of financial and technical resources. It is important to highlight that from 7th of April 1948 to 1951, there were discussions and negotiations going on in order to understand what kind of a structure in terms of administration and organization and what kind of financial resources would be involved to run such a global organization. World Health Organization also publishes the World Health Report, which provides expert assessments of global health topics and health statistics on all nations. Apart from these, the WHO also serves as a forum for summits and discussion on health issues. And this important feature of WHO, which can be significant from the perspective of coming prelims examination as well, is that the agency is part of United Nations Sustainable Development Group. Now let's focus our attention on World Health Assembly. World Health Assembly or WHA is the forum through which the WHO is governed by its 194 member states. It is considered to be world's highest health policy setting body and is composed of health ministers from member states. Now, in this context, it is important to highlight that membership of World Health Assembly composed of health ministers from member states only, and this can be a very important piece of information for your prelims examination. The World Health Assembly generally meets every year in the month of May in Geneva at the Palace of Nations, which also happens to be WHO headquarters. Now, when we talk about World Health Assembly, it has four major tasks. First, to decide major policy questions. Second, to approve the WHO work program. Third, approval of budget. And fourth, election of its Director General. From the perspective of coming prelims examination, it is important for us to know that original membership of World Health Assembly was just 55 members. In the current scheme of things, we know that the membership has swelled to 194 countries. Page number 12 of today's newspaper has an article which talks about of the places you will go. Now this topic is important more from the perspective of art and culture as it highlights the importance of Pahadi form of painting. We are aware of the fact that art and culture is a very important part of UPSC examination, and in the previous years we have seen many questions from the similar topic. In this context, let's take an example of 2018 in which the question was asked, the well-known paintings of Bani Thani belongs to which of the school? Option A, Bundi School. Option B, Jaipur Schools. Option C, Kangra School. Option D, Kishangarh School. The correct answer in this case is option D, that is Kishangarh. In this context, it is important for us to understand what is Pahadi paintings and what are its major forms. Now, Pahadi paintings, which literally mean a painting from the mountainous regions, where Pahad means mountain in Hindi. It is an umbrella term used for a form of Indian painting done mostly in miniature forms. Please pay attention to the aspect that these are done in miniature forms. These Pahadi paintings, as already referred in the name, originated from the Himalayan hill kingdoms of North India during the 17th to 19th century. The notable regions where this Pahadi painting is being practiced are Boshli, Mankot, Nurpur, Chamba, Kangra, Guler, Mandi and Garhwal. Now as far as the famous proponent of this particular art form are concerned, Nain Sukh was the famous master of the mid-18th century. Later, his family carried the responsibility of propagating this art form for another two generations. Now this brings to a very important part. What Pahadi region means with respect to Indian miniature painting. First, we need to demarcate the regions where Pahadi art form is basically being practiced. The Pahadi regions comprise present state of Himachal Pradesh, adjoining areas of Punjab, areas of Union Territory of Jammu in Jammu and Kashmir, and Garhwal in Uttarakhand. When we talk about these particular regions, these regions were divided into small states which were ruled by Rajput princes. And they were often engaged in the welfare activities in terms of promoting art and culture and other important items. These states were center of great artistic activity from the later half of the 17th century to the middle of 19th century. Now here it is also very important for us to understand that Pahadi painting art form is more of a miniature painting. It means that it is done on a very small scale, especially on books or albums. Here you can see the Pahadi form of art in which you can see the miniature style. On the bottom you can see that there is a text involved, and on the top part there is an art form. This is how the normally paintings have been done, which relate to either some book or to some album. Now let's try to understand the various art forms within the Pahadi form of art. The first is Basholi, which is the earliest center of painting in the Pahadi region. This was under the patronage of Raja Kripalpal. At the same time, an artist by the name of Devidasa executed miniature in the form of Rajmanjari illustrations in 1694 AD. Now, as far as the themes that were practiced here was Rajmanjari and Geet Govind. Now, when we talk about the Guler form of art, it basically developed in the Union Territory of Jammu Kashmir region, that is the Jammu region. And it also relates to the last phase of Basholi style, and this is where its inference is basically being drawn. The paintings made under the Guler art form, mainly consisting of portraits of Raja Balwant Singh of Jasrota by Nansukh himself. As already mentioned, Nansukh is one of the basic proponents of Pahadi art form. This style of Guler was inspired by the naturalistic style of Mughal painting of the Muhammad Shah period. The themes that were focused here was Bhagavad Gita, Geet Govind, the Baramasa and Rangamala. The Guler style was followed by another style of painting which is called as Kangra style. This represents the third phase of the Pahadi painting in the last quarter of the 18th century. The Kangra style was developed out of the Guler style itself. As far as themes is concerned, in the Kangra art form, local ruler portraits were basically done. Fourth is Kullu and Mandi. Along with the naturalistic Kangra style in Pahadi region, there also flourished a folk style painting in the Kullu Mandi area, which was mainly inspired by the local tradition. Again, the themes which are practiced here were Bhagavad Gita and the local rulers who ruled the particular region. So, in this way, we can see that this art form and its styles are very important from the perspective of examination, and you should keep a note of that. Page number 14 of today's newspaper has an article which talks about how pandemics have changed the world. Now, in this context, it is important for us to know that when you talk about pandemic and its impact on the world, this particular news has been covered twice in the recent past. On 13th of April 2020, Webb has explained COVID-19 and the crumbling world order. At the same time, on 10th of April 2020, Mangal sir has explained, will COVID-19 affect the course of globalization? Now, in this context, these are the important news which has already been covered from the perspective of this particular article. However, in this particular article, many pandemics that have occurred in the past have also been highlighted. So, in this context, we're talking about those pandemics. At the same time, the kind of impact on the world in terms of globalization and the problem caused by COVID-19, you can go back and refer to the articles discussed on 10th of April by Mangal sir and 13th of April by Webb sir. Let's begin our analysis. Now, we are aware of the fact that pandemics across history have changed the course of life in different realms, including social, political, economic, etc. Now, we are focusing on the important aspects which are highlighted in the article in terms of the impact of pandemics in history and their impact on human societies. In this context, author has highlighted few pandemics which are important for us to understand in order to see the things in right perspective. At the same time, in the end of the discussion, we'll also be focusing on COVID and we'll try to see how the impact of COVID is much similar to Justinian plague or the Black Death. Now, in this context, let's try to understand these pandemics starting from Justinian plague. Now, when we talk about Justinian plague, it was also called as bubonic plague and it was caused by bacteria which affects lymphatic nodes. Now, it is important for you to understand that this is very important from the perspective of prelims examination. The second important aspect that is important here is the transmission. The transmission of Justinian plague or the bubonic plague takes place from rats and fleas. It originated in the Egypt and reached Europe in 541 AD. During those days, cargo and transportation from ship was the major agent of transportation. And when the rats which are affected by bubonic plague reached the European countries, it really caused the havoc in that time. It severely hit the capital of Byzantine Empire, that is Constantinople. During the outbreak of this particular disease, this empire was under the reign of Justinian, and hence it was named as Justinian plague. Now, when we try to compare the infection and fatality rate of COVID 19 with other plagues which have affected human history, we can see that Justinian plague had killed more than 25 million people across the Mediterranean. It lasted till 750 AD and it weakened the Byzantine Empire due to famines. Second such pandemic which has been discussed in the article is Black Death. Now, when we talk about Black Death, it originated in Asia and reached in Europe again mainly through trading ships in 14th century. The transmission was again similar. It was caused by bubonic bacteria and transmitted by fleas and rats. Now, in order to control Black Death, social distancing was followed to avoid the spread of disease, particularly in the quarantining the travelers. This particular disease, that is Black Death, had huge impact on human history, and 75 million people, that is around 20% of world population, was killed by this disease. Now, when we talk about Black Death, it is also called as a great leveler as it reduced the inequality due to reduced population and increased proportion of private property, that is land, in addition to wages of serf improved. Third such pandemic is the Spanish flu. It is also called as the influenza flu of 1918 and it was caused by the H1N1 influenza virus. It is alleged that Spanish flu originated from China and it hit Europe the hardest. Although when we talk about this disease, this affected whole of the Europe equally, but it is called as Spanish flu. The reason for this is that Spanish media was the only one to report the cases as Spain remained neutral to the World War I. The media of other countries such as Germany, United Kingdom, France and United States did not report the cases due to presence of censorship during the World War. Now, as far as impact of this disease is concerned, more than 500 million people were affected and it killed 50 million people. Some of the experts even consider that the fall of Germany was caused by Spanish flu. Now, in this context, when we talk about COVID 19, the impact of COVID 19 appears to be very limited. At present, there are 2 million infections and total number of deaths caused by COVID 19 are hovering at around 1 lakh. This shows that regardless of the fact that humans have developed so much in the last 2 to 300 years, but still our ability to fight against diseases like COVID 19, H1N1, Ebola virus is very limited in nature. Now, from the perspective of the examination, it is important for you to know the various diseases which are highlighted in this particular case and the kind of impact that has been caused by them. Page number 5 of today's newspaper highlights an important festival from the state of Kerala, which is Thrissur Puram. Now, this topic is important from the perspective of art and culture and can be very important from the perspective of coming prelims examination. Now, let us try to understand the context of the news. Now, when we talk about Thrissur Puram, it is a famous festival of Kerala which was scheduled for early May, has been cancelled because of the fear of the spread of coronavirus. In view of the extended lockdown, the organizing committee met at Thrissur and decided to drop this year's Puram. This festival is very important for Kerala and the meeting was attended by government representatives which included State Agriculture Minister and Local Self-Government Minister of Kerala. Now, from the perspective of the examination, let's focus on the history which is associated with this Thrissur Puram festival. This festival, that is Thrissur Puram, is referred to as mother of all festivals in Kerala. It dates back to late 18th century and was started by Saktan Thampuram, the Maharaja of erstwhile Kochi state. The Maharaja organized the festival with the participation of 10 different temples. So this brings us to the second part of the discussion. When is this festival celebrated or what is the timing that is involved? This festival is of annual nature and every year in the Malayalam month of Medam, that is April and May, this festival is being celebrated. The focus of this festival is Veda Kumantan temple where all the activities related to the festival normally take place. The Veda Kumantan temple is located in Thrissur only. As part of the celebration, the festivities of the main day commence with the arrival of Purams from the 8 temples in the morning. Now, in this process of celebrating Thrissur Puram, an enthralling lineup of vibrantly decked up or decorated elephants is showcased. and it is marked by Kudamattam ceremony, which involves swift and rhythmic changing of brightly colored and decorated parasols, and it is one among the highlights and is keenly watched event. The Puram festival mainly happens between two groups representing geographical divisions of Paramakevu and Thiruvambadi. Another important part of the festival is Elanjathara Melam, which is performed using traditional instruments. Around 250 odd artists participate in the traditional orchestra led by Chenda artists and includes other traditional instruments of Kerala such as Korukmuzal, Kombu, and Ilanthalam. The finale is marked by a grand firework show in the early morning. So, this is how the Thrissur Puram festival is being celebrated. You should make a note of this festival for the coming prelims examination. Now, based on today's discussion, let's take up question for the day. Consider the following statements. First, Spanish flu was caused by H1N1 virus. Statement 2, Spanish flu was named so as other European countries did not report the outbreak of disease. We have to identify the correct statement. Option A reads 1 only, option B reads 2 only, option C reads both 1 and 2, and option D reads neither 1 nor 2.